Hey guys, Chop here. Rhinedottir is the creator of Albedo and a master of khaenri'ah, a form of alchemy in the world of Genshin Impact. She used khaenri'ah to make not only Albedo, but also the likes of Durin the Dragon, the Rift Hounds, and Primordial Albedo. Clearly she was obsessed with the creation of life, but what if I told you that there was actually a bigger reason for her making Albedo? You may have heard of the term magnum opus, which is Latin for the great work. It's used somewhat casually now just to refer to some great accomplishment, but it was originally used exclusively in real-world alchemy. The real magnum opus was intended to be the process by which someone could create the Philosopher's Stone, the most anticipated accomplishment in alchemy that never came. If you've ever seen this little unknown indie franchise, Harry Potter, then you probably already know that it was a stone capable of immortality. Okay, that's all well and good of course, but what does this actually have to do with Genshin? Well, there are 4 processes needed to create the Philosopher's Stone: Nigredo, Albedo, Citrinitas, and Rubedo. Whoa, hang on, let's just go back to real quick. Albedo, as in Rhinedottir's creation? You're telling me that the most prominent figure in Genshin's alchemy has a creation named after one of the processes in what is quite possibly the most prominent works in real-life alchemy. And that's exactly where our lead starts. Let's see how far we can go with this, shall we? Let's first of all go through the processes and see where we can identify them in Genshin. The first step is Nigredo, which is essentially a decomposition of something to blacken it. The idea is that it's completely void of any substance and is now a blank canvas. This was often told to be done actually using chaos by the Greeks. The next step is Albedo, which is to give light and whiten the substance. This purifies it and is intended to wash away any impurities. Next was Citrinitas, and this is the solar light, as in real light that we now know today. It's described as a yellowness in the process. Finally, we have Rubedo, the reddening. It signifies the end of the process, and as a result, you have the red Philosopher's Stone. I think the Nigredo process is actually quite easy to work out, especially if you've seen my previous theories where I compare the Greek chaos to Genshin's abyss. Khaenri'ah was underground and shrouded in darkness, very close to the abyss. With harnessing its power, you can have the blank state needed to begin Genshin's magnum opus. Rhinedottir was from Khaenri'ah, so it's quite easy to see that it was the perfect place to start. Next is Albedo, which is Albedo. I don't mean it quite so literally in that Albedo was the one to do it, just that her creation of life, with the most successful case being Albedo, is a sign that she had completed this stage. It may also be of note that during this stage, the subject is divided into 2 opposing principles. We've seen that Albedo has something similar with the Primordial Albedo and Durin, so that only strengthens this claim even more. But what does that have to do with purification or whitening? I hear you, okay? Albedo's constellation is Princeps Cretaceous, and guess what Cretaceous means? Chalk. And chalk is a common ancient symbol of purity, and is obviously the whitening needed for this step. Checkmate, motherfuckers! Honestly, this is the easiest one, given it's the reason we can even theorize on all of this. I will say, it's quite possible our sign of this being Albedo isn't as far as we can go for just this stage. The description for the concealed talent dropped by the Rift Wolf states that all the marvels in this world must pale before Cretaceous, the greatest work of them all. And where we heard the term greatest work before? Oh yes, the magnum bloody opus. Albedo's constellation is essentially saying that he's the leading figure from the Cretaceous work, and that work is Rhinedottir's endeavour into creating life, and is named after the Latin word for chalk, the symbol of purity. So whilst, yes, Albedo is part of the Albedo step in the creation of the Philosopher's Stone, the whole work he is a part of, Cretaceous, is the real second step that Rhinedottir used. The third one may seem a little stranger. Citrinitas. Where does Rhinedottir get solar light from to yellow the stone? One of the most popular theories in Genshin, and the first one I did on this channel even, is that the Traveller is of the light element. They can control all the elements if they resonate with them, just like a light wave, and can refract into the elements they need to use. With their full light powers unlocked, they're able to use a yellowy light power set. If you do need more proof on this, just watch the video of mine that I'll link below for you. But I'd like to also move on with this video. The Traveller is capable of using a yellowy solar light when they have all of their powers, which they don't yet have. So does that mean that Rhinedottir hasn't actually made the Philosopher's Stone yet? Well, the Traveller isn't the only one capable of this power. Their sibling is also. Now, we haven't seen them use their powers since they were first trapped by the Sustainer, only abyssal powers. But they probably did have these powers at first, and the Abyss had corrupted them and that solar light that they once had. They were very likely spawned into that with all of their powers, unlike our Traveller, so the Citronita's process Rhinedottir used for the third step was all thanks to the sibling imbuing it with their light. That leaves just one final process needed to make the Philosopher's Stone, Rubedo, a reddening process that isn't really described in any other way. The only other information popularly discussed surrounding Rubedo is the symbols used for it. This was either blood, a phoenix, a rose, a figure wearing red clothes, or a crowned king. Out of these 5, there are 3 contenders we can look at. The first is the rose, which may seem odd initially considering that khaenri'ah is underground and doesn't actually grow flowers naturally. Apart from one flower, the Intavat. The most likely family of flowers for the Intavat is the rose family, and this flower is very culturally significant to khaenri'ah, so it could be a fitting end to the Philosopher's Stone creation. I'd also like to look at blood, although I'm not actually talking about the blood of any khaenri'ahns. This would be the blood of the Blood Moon Sister, which kind of sounds kind of crazy on its own, but bear with me. If you don't know anything about the Moon Sisters, I'd highly recommend looking into them because it's very interesting stuff. But the bare bones information you need to know for this is that there were once 3 Moon Sisters. They used to cooperate and love each other, but in typical sibling fashion, all turned on each other and mutually killed one another. Which, honestly, which sibling hasn't done this, am I right? Leaving one of their corpses illuminating the night sky of Teyvat. The other 2 locations of the corpses are not known for certain, but we can fairly safely assume the one in the Abyss is one, and the third one is likely either the one in the loading screen or the Blood Moon we've seen before. The Blood Moon is the one I'd like to focus on, because it was very clearly prominent in the destruction of khaenri'ah. Now, we've seen the power of the Heavenly Principles, and they are obviously this space power that looks like cubes. What's that got to do with the Blood Moon though? Nothing, actually. Nothing at all. So why is the Blood Moon in khaenri'ah during the Cataclysm? I would theorise that it's possible this Blood Moon was already there before the Cataclysm when Rhinedottir harnessed it as the final step in her ultimate creation. The reddening of the stone using Rubedo was because of the red moon. The red light of the moon shone down on the white stone, shining it red, and as such, it became the Philosopher's Stone. Not a fan of either of those 2 possibilities? Well, I've got one more for you that I actually believe even more than that. The symbol I think that represents Rubedo in Genshin Impact is the crowned king of khaenri'ah, King Ermin. He is a crowned king after all. There is one detail about him though that I find incredibly interesting. It's never mentioned that he died or was even injured in the war. It was instead said that the Alberic clan took over from him after his, and I quote, strength failed. It may not seem weird to you at first, but why did they specify this? They could have just as easily said that he was injured in battle, ran away from his duty, something like that. Clearly they want him to still be alive, but just the way they took him out of the picture makes it seem separate from the Cataclysm. Almost as if he was already dying before the destruction of his nation, and only then was it that his strength eventually failed him. What I really like about this theory about him already dying is that his name derives from Odin, who is notorious for being crazed about his own death and fate. See, Odin in Norse mythology is fated to die, and in knowing this, he goes crazy trying everything there is to prevent it. It's actually the main plot point of Norse mythology in the Cause for Ragnarok, which is the inevitable destruction of everything. Odin is the initial cause that leads to the destruction of his kingdom because he is trying to prevent his own death. Now, what if his Genshin equivalent, King Ermin, had a similar fate? He was dying, and in trying to prevent that death, tasked Rhinedottir to use khaenri'ah to make him immortal. With that, she tried to make the Philosopher's Stone, which cures any illness and grants immortality. He was the final step to making it. Rubedo, the crowned king. Rhinedottir tried to make King Ermin immortal, and the proof for this all lies back in Albedo. This is honestly quite the theory I've conjured up, but think about it. Hoyoverse names their characters very purposefully, not just in the Ars Goetia Archon names, but even to the likes of the very Rhinedottir we've talked about originating from the Rhine Maidens. They purposefully named her son Albedo because of this process, and because it links to a way to give Ermin the immortality he needs to avoid his inevitable death. You could even go a little further with this if you've seen my video on why khaenri'ah was destroyed. In that theory, I claim it to be an item that goes against the heavenly principles, or something she wants that leads to the Cataclysm. That item could be the Philosopher's Stone granting Ermin immortality. Either the heavenly principles wants it for herself as to avoid erosion, or more likely, she doesn't want any mortal to be immortal. Hell, perhaps Ermin was even so crazed about achieving immortality that he tried to attack Celestia once he thought khaenri'ah was strong enough so that they wouldn't take it from him. This then supports the notion that khaenri'ah attacks first, which is somewhat alluded to by Dainsleif. I think that both are possibilities personally. Oh, and also just a small tidbit, but the Philosopher's Stone was not only capable of granting immortality, but also turning base metals into gold. Gold, as in Rhinedottir's nickname. Coincidence? Maybe, but here's another detail that links the two. This is a super quick little idea as well that I just think is cool but doesn't have any particular evidence. But we could see the recreation of this stone far late into the game, with the Abyss twin using the Abyss for the Nigredo process, then either Albedo or Rhinedottir using khaenri'ah for the Albedo step, then the Traveller for Citrinitas, and finally the second heir in the Gnostic hymn for Rubedo. I just think it's possible given we have all of the necessary requirements to make it. Maybe it's even the reason that the heavenly principles is reawakened. Again, that part I would just find cool. The rest of the theory is what should really be analysed. So, what do you think? Do you believe my theory, or do you think Hoyoverse didn't pay much attention to naming Albedo, and that Ermin wasn't already dying maybe? Let me know your thoughts. It's been a lot of fun going through your comments recently. Honestly, I've just loved it to bits. Until next time though, chop out. Bye.